using search web parts to basically go off and query and find products, in this example, that match a particular piece of metadata. The other thing that we will have as a cool feature out of 2013 is the concept of friendly URLs. The other thing to think about is the content that I'm publishing through the catalog can actually be anywhere on the farm. So one of the big challenges with the content query web part is you're usually querying content from your own site collection, maybe a different site or a different list within your collection. Now, because we actually have search underpinning the roll-up capabilities, as long as your search service is indexing that content and it's in the index, we can actually return it as results on a web part. So where we have the content query limited to your site collection, the search web parts now are limited to anything you can index. So it can go across site collections, across web applications, it could go across other farms if you needed it to. So what I'd like to do now, before I dive into my demos of how to build it, I'd like to demonstrate what it is we're actually going to build. So normally I run this session as a 50-minute or an hour session, but given the half-hour format, what I've tried to do is I want to show you what we're starting with, or what the end goal is. So this is the Contoso audio store example, which is the reference case. If you want to read up about it, have a bit of a search on the internet and you'll find some other examples. But basically, if I navigate back to the home page, what we're looking at here is a publishing site. And you'll notice the navigation across the top here correlates to a term set. So somebody's sat down and created a products term set, and then we can go off and tag content using that term set, and then that term set can also be used as my navigation structure for my online store. So in this example, notice what happens if I navigate down into computers, laptops, for example. Just give it a second to load. So a couple of things I want to point out. Firstly, up the top of the page, notice the URL. So we've actually got a nice friendly name of /computers/laptop. So I've navigated into computers as a category, and I'm now viewing all the items that are tagged in my index as laptops. Another thing I'd like to point out is down the left-hand side, notice the rich refiners that are now available to me. These are all web parts that are available to you out of the box. So after this session, if you get a chance, sit down and have a play with 2013 and you'll find there's a bunch of new web parts, such as these refiner web parts that you can then use to refine the result set. So what we're really looking at here is a dynamic page. This content in the middle of the page is actually another web part that's going off and showing me all the items that match computers/laptops. And then as I use the refiners down the side, it's simply going to refresh the web part in the middle of the page to hone in on my search results. Now, if I click on a particular item in the result set, you'll notice there is a picture and there's a number of properties or pieces of information about that particular product that are available to me. The interesting thing is where this information is coming from. This information is not coming directly from the list. It's basically coming straight out of the index. So rather than so you'll notice the URL at the top hasn't changed, but I can tell you now this content doesn't exist in this site collection. It's actually existing in another site collection, and I'll show you how that's actually created in a second. But the point here is all of this information is being driven off the search index. Now, why I'm excited about that is think about the content query web part that you're currently using. You can usually put one or two of those on a page, and then after that, the performance starts to really hit you. The point here is, rather than using the content query web part, you could start to switch over to use the search web part. Because the index is going to be created anyway for your search capabilities, we can now use the web parts to feed off the search index to present content dynamically. So that's the only thing that's probably a little bit of a design issue here that you need to think about. If this information is updated in the original source, it could, depending on your crawl timeframes, be slightly out of date. So if you are going to implement this technology, you will need to use the new continuous crawl functionality in FAST, if that's important to make sure that your product catalog is kept up to date. Okay, so I'm now just going to switch machines. If you're interested, I can hang around after the session and walk you guys through that demo in a bit more detail. But what I wanted to do is switch across, and I'm going to introduce you guys to the example I'm using, which is a bicycle store. So what I've done here is I've actually used the product catalog site template, which is new in 2013. The product catalog site template here we go. So this is the product catalog site template. You can see like a lot of the other site templates in SharePoint, they try to give you guidance on how to set up and configure your site when you first create it. So I've actually done a little bit of pre-baking in the background, because obviously given the short amount of time that I have to present, I've actually gone through and populated my products list with information. So you can see what they're trying to guide you to do is to create a content type to represent your products. So everything you already know about site columns and managed metadata is still relevant. You declare a content type that reflects your products or services or whatever you're trying to publish out through the organization. You go through, you create your content types, attach them to the list. Now, one little gotcha that you will come across is the items in your list will typically not be picked up by the search index until there's a significant number of items in that list. And what I've found is it's usually around 10 to 15 items. Anything less than that, then the indexer does pick it up, but it doesn't actually process it and display it properly. You'll find it's missing. So what I typically try to do is punch in 10 random items into that list. And in this example, if I just drill through to the products list itself, you can see I've already been in here. I've created about 10 items in here just to reinforce creating the actual items. We're really just talking about a list full of items. In this example, they're product content types. So nothing special, nothing really unusual so far. You will notice that the biggest thing I want to point out is the fact that I've actually gone through and created a taxonomy as a term set for managing my bicycles in this example. So you'll notice there's BMX bikes, kids bikes, mountain bikes and racing bikes. So whatever taxonomies you want to come up with, you attach those to your content type and use that to tag or categorize your products. At this point, the actual products list, if we go in and have a look at the list settings on the product list, one of the new features that we have is, notice down the bottom here, there's actually down the bottom here is an item that says catalog settings. If I go into the catalog settings, this is where I can actually declare my list as a catalog. Now this is very significant. Quick show of hands, how many people have actually set up managed properties in 2010? How long did it take you? Quick show of hands if you got it done in a couple of hours. A couple of days. So what you would have struggled with was you created your content, you crawled, the search engine discovered the properties as crawled properties. You then mapped the crawled properties to managed properties. You then did another re-index, so it actually filled the managed properties. You then took the managed properties and put them on a search refiner page or something along those lines. And it was usually a couple of hours of work depending on how much content you had and how fast your indexing was. So what I'm doing here is I'm going into a particular list. I can go into any list for that matter. And you'll notice in here I can actually declare this library as a catalog. Now that's very significant. Although it's a sweet, innocent little checkbox, it actually does a lot for me. By me checking this checkbox and declaring this list or library as a catalog, that's going to automatically promote all the columns on that library, not just as crawled properties, but as managed properties. So think about all those hours that you spent re-indexing, looking for the crawled properties. It's going to go through and do that all automatically for you. Now the point of making them as managed properties is then all the search web parts will actually then start to pick up off those managed properties. So I've already done this and I've already sent the indexer through to actually do a re-index on this. Otherwise we'd probably be waiting for half an hour alone, just waiting for the product catalog to go through. Now what I want to do now is switch across to the publishing side of things. So your product catalog can be anywhere in your organization. So for example, this could be sitting smack bang in the middle of the marketing site collection. So the marketing guys can go in there, they can manage their products, they can